Welcome to this Aztlander presentation, The Life of Yax Kuk Mo, Mover and Shaker of the Mayan World, with Janice Van Cleve, author and independent researcher.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, at least this afternoon here in Seattle. Jim and I were trying really hard to get this Zoom sharing up, and it worked right before, and it was a challenge now. So we got it here. I'm just leaving the screen just like it was, and we'll go in and start with Yax Kuk Mo. Like he said, following up on Yax Kuk Mo's life is a challenge of connecting the dots. He did not leave any inscriptions of his own that we know of, and most everything we've got on him is retrospective. So there's a little inscription here and a little inscription there, but in connecting them, we have a pretty good idea of his life. This is the biography I wrote of him, and I did it as a historical novel because some of those other books that Jim mentioned that I wrote are okay. They're dull and boring. they're more technical and translating glyphs and stuff like that. So I wanted to make this more approachable by a general public. And so a biographical novel is a way to do it. And now I'm going to, okay, and here is a photograph of Yax Kuk Mo. No, it's not sepia toned. This is an artist's description of him in Casa Knich, which is a wonderful interactive museum in Copan for the kids that was built and maintained by Association Copan. I was down there in 2002 in my second visit, and I was interviewing Ricardo Rugurcia, who is in charge of Association Copan, and he introduced me to Rene Viel, who was working on some ceramics down there, and then he says, hop in the truck. They took me over here to Casa Knich, and once I saw what it was doing for the kids in Honduras, I decided that this is something I'm going to support, and I've been supporting it ever since. And now we're going to move this over here. Okay. Okay, to connect the dots of Yax Kuk Mo's life, you got to start at altar Q. This altar was commissioned and dedicated by Yax Pasha Chan Yopat, who is the 16th king of Copan, in 776. He set it up in the west courtyard of the Acropolis, dedicated to Yax Kuk Mo, and right in front of his mortuary temple. This is only a reproduction. The original is in the sculpture museum. And around the sides are 16 kings of Copan. And on its face, right here, is Yax Kuk Mo literally passing the torch to Yax Pashan Chen Yopat. And this is all showing the 16th king's legitimacy. But what we're really interested in is the inscription on the top. The translation goes like this. Starting up here, I hope you can see my cursor, I think. Okay. On 5 Caban, 15 Yax Kin, which is the 4th day of September in 426, Lord Kuk Mo received the Kuil scepter at the foundation house. That's this one right here, the Witina. On 8 Ahau 18 Yaskin, which is the 7th day of September in 426, Kinich Yax Kuk Mo, now he's a Kinich Yax Kuk Mo, set out from the foundation house. 153 days later, it happened on February 8th, 427, my sacred Kowil, commander from the west, his journey came to an end. That's over here in this middle column. He established the cornerstone and the boundaries. On January 27th, down here, cursor, where'd you go? Anyway, on January 27th, 776, this altar was dedicated to Kinich Yax Kuk Mo in the land of Yasparsha Chan Yopat. 64 days later, on March 1st, 776, he cached the wooden box under the altar. That's a whole lot of information all in one place. There's a couple of things that I want to point out in here. First, some of the older books on Copan say that Yax Kuk Mo's became king of Copan in 426. Well, it says right here he was nowhere near Copan in 426. He was 153 days march away from it. He received, up here on A2, he received his license to become a king, but he still needed a kingdom. And the second, over here on B2, this second glyph, this is the Witina. This has been variously translated, the foundation house, the tree roots tree house, and so forth. The consensus is that this is a place in Teotihuacan, in the Valley of Mexico. And this same symbol appears on the glyphs, on the inscriptions of several kings, Mataquila and Quirigua and Tikal. So many kings went to their Witina to get their license to be a king. And Barbara William Fash and Alexander Tocovini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, did a paper on the House of New Fire at Teotihuacan and its legacy in Mesoamerica in 2009. And this pretty much narrowed down that this license to rule was obtained at Teotihuacan itself. Now down here, where it says that Yax Kuk Mo arrived, not there yet, arrived at the Ashwitik. The Ashwitik is the cornerstone. I covered this in Aztlander of June 2022. And what it refers to is the center and foundation and cornerstone of the dynasty. And when I was in an 8 Batz tour, I gave a presentation on this. This relates to the center of the hearth in a typical Maya home, the 3 stones around the cooking fire, and the place of creation up there in the Orion constellation. And I think Jim did a talk on this, or Aztlander on this a couple of months ago. The best translation for this is cornerstone, because it's the basis for the rest of the dynasty. Now, that was a important collection of glyphs, and here's another here's another reference to Yax Kuk Mo. Turns out that he did not make this 153-day journey alone. This is from Kitigwa Zoomorph P. These are 3 of the cartouches on that boulder. And it reads, this was dedicated in 795 by the king of Kitigwa, Skyzul. And it says, on the 4th day of September in 426, sounds familiar, right? Tutum Yul Kinich came to the foundation house. On the 7th day of September 426, he planted a stone and fastened the headband. This was done under the authority of Kinich Yax Kuk Mo, Lord of Copan. Here's Yax Kuk Mo over here, and here's Lord of Copan. He wasn't technically Lord of Copan yet because he wasn't even there yet. But this is a retrospective description of events, and by the time this king is inscribing this on the zoomorph, yes, Yax Kuk Mo had already been king of Copan. It shows also that Kitigwa was under the Copan hegemony from the very beginning until Kawak Sky executed 18 Rabbit in 437. The next dot on our journey of Yax Kuk Mo's life is Stela E, which was erected by Balam Nen. Balam Nen is the 7th king of Copan. It was raised up in 534. And this is a beautiful stela. I really love it. Every time I go to see it in Copan, it's stately, it's serene, it's standing there alone over a pile of rubble with the jungle in the back. Just makes me think of John Lloyd Stevens all over again. Anyway, most of the inscriptions on this stela are telling about, I'm a great king, I'm doing all the rituals, but there are 3 glyphs on the side that tell more of the story of Yax Kuk Mo. And apparently, Yax Kuk Mo was not welcomed at Copan with open arms. Up here at C10, it says, he brought him down, Yax Kuk Mo. He succeeded him, Kak Hun. Now that does not follow the usual syntax. It's usually verb, object, subject. But in this case, Yax Kuk Mo is the subject of both verbs, throwing him down and succeeding him. So the scribe chose to put Yax Kuk Mo in the middle. Now, this Kak Hun down here shows that there was a ruler, a chief, at Copan before Yax Kuk Mo got there. We don't know anything more about him. It could be, since this is a retrospective inscription, that he was actually a Lenca chief from the Lenca tribe in Honduras, and he was just given the name Kak Hun by a later Maya scribe. On the other hand, he could have been an actual Maya ruler, and that could have been his real name. I always smile at that because when I was a treasurer of a condo, we had a service come by every year to check the fire extinguishers and the sprinklers, and they were called Fire One. So, so Kak Hun over here is Fire One. This stela is Stela 15. It was raised by the same king, Balam Nen, 10 years earlier, on August 22nd of 524. And this is only the top half. The bottom half has been destroyed, and it's this much of it is sitting here alone on the path coming from the ticket booth back here into the great plaza of Copan. And I have pushed several times to get this very important stela moved into sculpture museum. I even offered to pay for it, but nope, it's still there. On the front of it, Balam Nen identifies himself as the seventh king of Copan. And then he lists a whole bunch of rituals saying that he did this and he did this and he did this, continuing the ritual cycle that a king is supposed to do when he wants to continue his kingdom. He mentions Yax Kuk Mo. There should be a little, there it is. He mentions Yax Kuk Mo right here, right after he talked about a ritual he did on March 23rd, 416. This has led David Stewart in Understanding Early Classic Copan and Linda Sheely to speculate that maybe Yax Kuk Mo was in Copan 11 years before he came to conquer it. Or, since Balam Nen was well aware that Yax Kuk Mo participated in the all-important Baktun ending of December 9th, 735, that he was really referring to that. We don't know. But remember that date, 416, because it could be very useful later on in this presentation. The changing of the Baktun on December 9th, 435 was a hugely important event. It's a huge calendar event in the whole Maya world. And it's at Copan, it's documented here on the Matmat marker. This marker is very important, and it is in the Sculpture Museum right now. It covered this tomb in front of the Matmat temple. It's a cyst tomb. You can see it's a round circular tomb down there. And in it was buried a young woman with all the emblems and accoutrements of a Maya shaman. And she was buried Teotihuacano style. Also, the forensic analysis of her teeth indicated that she came from central Peten. Very interesting. Right around here, you see this square hole. This is where the lintels lay. And then on top of that, you see the circular. This is where the Matmat marker lay. This was so important to Popo Hole, the second ruler, that he built a shrine over the Matmat tomb, which he he dedicated that Matmat marker in 446 or 443. They're not sure about reading the date, but he built the shrine over it, and this shrine was honored for 300 years. You notice that he built later the Papagayo platform, but he made sure to preserve the shrine. He put Stela 63 behind the Matmat marker against the wall, where he declared himself the son of Yax Kuk Mo. The fourth king, Kuish, put a step in there right before the Stela 63, and this stayed there through various alterations until 18 Rabbit built the Chorkatian temple over here to house the burial chamber of his father. So it was very important to these early rulers, this tomb. And here's the marker. It's in a quatrefoil, which shows it's a view from the other world, and it shows Popo Hole over here in the superior position on the right-hand side, and Yax Kuk Mo on the inferior position on the left-hand side. And it indicates that Yax Kuk Mo took his son in as a co-ruler several years before he died. Now, this, even though this marker was commissioned a couple of years after the Baktun ending in 435, we can consider it a snapshot of the event because it describes here the gifts and sacrifices that Yax Kuk Mo made at that time that he dedicated. And here is the Mot tomb. You can see it's a logogram with the smoke coming out the top, and the deer hoofs, and the rest of the sacrifices that he and his son made. And it talks about the 4 macaw heads that were part of the ball court that was next door. These 4 macaw heads were later stored in the shrine by 18 Rabbit when he covered it up. So this really is a kind of a snapshot of the actual event. And excuse me. Here is from the National Geographic. Here is the mortuary temple of Yax Kuk Mo. This is Temple 16, and this is the Rosalila underneath it. This was discovered by Ricardo Garcia back in the last century. And right down here, this is the tomb of Yax Kuk Mo. And he built a structure that archaeologists called the Hunal, and he was buried, and that was his home, and he was buried in the floor. Then Popol built Yenal above it to house that tomb and that sacred place. And then the Lady of the Margarita tomb was buried in here, and Popol we skipped ahead to remains. Popol built Margarita temple over that. Eventually, the 8th king of Copan built Rosalila. And we know that this whole structure here is the Ashwitik, the cornerstone of the dynasty. And we have the authority we have on that is 18 Rabbit himself, because he tells us on his own Stela B that he went into this temple, he did his sacrifice, and he raised the stela in the image of the Mowits, the Macaw Mountain, which is this here. It was in the center of the city, which is the center right here. It was a burial place. It was a tomb, Hunal, and it was the Ashwitik. Says it all very clear. And up above that inscription is a carving of Yax Kuk Mo himself. Couldn't be more clear. Anyway, well, we'll just go this way. Here is Yax Kuk Mo himself. This is his remains. This is the late Robert Shar investigating the tomb. We're very lucky to have these remains. It's been pretty definitely proven that this is Yax Kuk Mo from all the honors that were paid to this tomb, plus the grave goods. And there's a couple of key things, though, that that are important about these remains. Number one, it is a male, and Jane Dykstra and her team did a very thorough forensic investigation of these remains and determined that he died between 55 years old and 70 years old. That's really important. He died in 437, which we will show later, because we do have his tombstone as well. The strontium analysis in his teeth showed that he grew up in the central Peten. That is very significant, and we will see why in just a minute. Because David Stewart, in investigating, continuing investigations of inscriptions, he did an analysis of that Stela 63, on which Popehol declared that he was the son of Yax Kuk Mo. And on it, he named his father as the Ashwich Cha Zuma, the Three Hills Mountain Lord. David Stewart showed us that Three Hills Mountain is the toponym for Caracol, not for any other place. 18 Rabbit also called Yax Kuk Mo a Three Hills Mountain Lord, which means that it was common knowledge that he was a Caracol Lord. That's intriguing. This is an important dot in the connection of dots that we are putting together for Yax Kuk Mo. Now here's Copan down here in Honduras. Here's Caracol in the Maya Mountains, and here's the central Peten. So we know from that strontium analysis that he did not grow up in Copan, in Caracol, because the strontium signature up here in the mountains is different from the strontium signature down here in the Tikal central Peten area. But at some point in his life, for some reason, by some methodology, he became a lord of Caracol too. Now this is where it becomes really interesting. Remember, he died in 437. He died at the age of 55, somewhere between 55 and 70. You subtract 55 from 437, and what do you get? 382. What was going on in the central Peten in 382? Siak Kak had invaded Tikal 4 years earlier. The Entrada. He replaced the king of Tikal with Nunayin, the son of Spiritual Owl, who was from Teotihuacan. If Yax Kuk Mo was there, even as a baby, these events must have affected his life. Now, if he died at 60, he would have been 1 year old, and he would have been there at the time of the Entrada. If he died at 70, he would have been 11 years old and very much affected by this change in the Maya world that Siak Kak created. This is what inspired me to pursue his story, because he's got to have been impacted and influenced by this event. And he did the same thing in Copan that Siak Kak did in Tikal. He invaded, overthrew the king, and put himself on the throne. We will come back and visit that later. Here is another artifact. This is way after the fact. This is during the 7th century, during the reign of 18 Rabbit's father. Here we have another looking into a portal from the other world. We have two guys on either side of a wrapped stela, and this is Yax Nunayin. He's the son of Spiritual Owl and the man that Siak Kak put on the throne of Tikal. And here is Yax Kuk Mo. And he's pointing up here to these four glyphs. And the four glyphs read, on one ahau, 8 chen, is the stone binding of foliated ahau. That's October 29th, 376. Now, there's been a lot of talk about foliated ahau. This symbol shows up in a number of different places and spanning a number of different time periods, which means it was not the same person. There is a foliated jaguar on Tikal Stela 31, but that is a real name. That is a real person. This is not a name. In Copan Note 96, Linda Shealy made the argument that this is a title. That this is a title, and I think that she was onto it there, because here we have Yax Mayan, the son of Spiritual Owl. Here we have Yax Kuk Mo, and the date of this action is 376, which is 2 years after Spiritual Owl became king of, or emperor of, Teotihuacan. I think this is just a supposition. I think that Yax Kuk Mo is pointing up there and saying, this is the person from whom we both got our power. For a very complete analysis of this, Diana Fridberg wrote a paper, her Harvard University thesis, called Peccaries in the Ancient Maya Economy, Ideology, and Iconography, and she deals with this peccary skull. It was found in tomb number 1 in the cementarium of El Cementario in Copan. Must have been given as some kind of gift to whoever was buried in there. And then one more hint about Yax Kuk Mo and where he was and what he was doing. This is the Hunal, the Hombre de Tikal. It is a large stone, full-bodied statue. The head has been removed. Part of the shoulder over here is damaged, and one of the arms is gone. One of the hands is gone. And this is in the Tikal Museum on site. And there's an inscription on the back. Now, this particular artifact has gone through several changes. First of all, on Stela 9 over here, on Glyph 9 over here, shows that it was a depiction of Chak Toki Chak, who was the king of Tikal that Siak Kak killed when he invaded Tikal. But later on, an inscription was put on here that Federico Fassen, in a research report he wrote on a new early text from Tikal, which you can find on Mesoweb, he identified some of the glyphs here. This is Yax Mayan, and he said this is Siak Kak. There's the Tikal emblem gift. There it is again. We can't make a complete translation of this inscription because so much of it is damaged up here. It's got a big hole in the center. But he identified these two glyphs on E2 and F2. This is Ku and this is Mo. Is that our Kuk Mo? Is that the person who later became Yax Kuk Mo? It's interesting because when Yax Mayan over here died in 404, this monument is telling us something about his his life, his accession to the throne, and his death. His successor, Siyash Chan Kawil II, didn't take over the throne until 411. That's about a 7-year break in the Tikal succession. And this is talking about the succession. Yax Kuk over here couldn't have had a role in the succession because he died in 403, the year before. Did Yax Kuk Mo have a role in Tikal in this time period? Don't know, but this is intriguing up here in E2 and F2. The last inscription we're going to deal with is the Shukpi stone. This is the Shukpi stone. It is the tombstone of Yax Kuk Mo. We're looking into the Margarita tomb back in, I'm trying to remember, 2010. 2010, yeah. There was a symposium in December of 2010 in Copan, and Ricardo Garcia took us into some of these temples, into these tombs, and that's why I've got these photographs. This is the tomb back there, and this is a Shukpi stone. It was moved from its original position to be part of the Margarita tomb. It's only carved on one side, and as you can see, the inscription is very clear, not eroded. So it must have been a step inside the Yenhal temple that was built over Yax Kuk Mo's tomb, which would be appropriate because it's his tombstone. And here's the inscription on it. The, the text has 32 glyphs, and it's in 3 phrases. Section A1 to C2, up here in the front, identifies the name of the stone as Itsamye Bolun. The next section, from D1 to H2, says that this stone marks the tomb of the Lord of Copan and was commissioned by Popahol, who calls himself Lord of the Lake, not Lord of Copan, and first ruler after the founder on November 28th, 437. So it is the tomb of, it's marking the tomb of Yax Kuk Mo 2 years after he died. This next part is really interesting. The section I1 to the end is the epitaph of Yax Kuk Mo. The big bird in the center marks the beginning of the phrase, "It is told on the 9 carved stones that under the auspices of the 4th Lord of the Night, he," meaning Yax Kuk Mo, "took the headband at the 6 Roads City Place." That may be another euphemism, another metaphor for Teotihuacan. He is God of the lake. Now remember, Popahol is the Lord of the lake, so he's the son of the God of the lake, making him a son of God. Kinich Yax Kuk Mo, and I'm going to turn to the last. Move this over a bit because it's blocking my view. I don't want that yet. Okay. This is Kinich Yax Kuk Mo. The last 4 glyphs over here is Kinich Yax Kuk Mo. And then the last 2 glyphs here's Yax Kuk Mo. Now here's this glyph. This is very interesting. This is a how, and it was used before earlier to say the Lord of the Lake. This is the Black Lord, Ek Ahau. That's Ek Ahau. And it's a relationship between Yax Kuk Mo and this character down at the bottom. Matthew Looper said that Ek Ahau means a warlord, a lieutenant, a military figure of some kind, and he shows that Kawak Sky, who killed 18 rabbit, called himself the Ek Ahau of Copan, the warrior of Copan. And here, Yax Kuk Mo is saying that Yax Kuk Mo is a warlord of, guess who? Siak Kuk. That's quite a statement. How did a young man born somewhere in the Tikal area make it to be a lord of Karakol? Perhaps, maybe, you don't know. Perhaps play a role in the succession of at Tikal. Went to Teotihuacan, got his license to be king, and end up as a lieutenant of Siak Kuk. Here's the summary that we have. If he died at 70, he was born in 367. If he died in 55, he was born in 382, Central Peten. He must have advanced his career under Siak Kuk. Sometime, we don't know when, sometime he was a Karakol Ahau. Maybe he was in Tikal for the regency between 404 and 411. Maybe he was in Copan in 416. He received it's much clearer after that. He received the Kawil scepter, the license to become king. September 4th, 426, he left the Witina in 426. He supervised Kitigwa in 427, obviously installing the lieutenant there before he came over to Copan. He arrived in Copan in February 8th, 427, threw down Kakun, celebrated the Baktun ending in 435, and died 437. That's quite a career. No? I want next, and I want next. But we have lingering mysteries. The common narrative is that Yax Kuk Mo killed Kakun, married his wife, and Popoho was their son. But there's no evidence that the woman buried in Margarita tomb was married to either Kakun or Yax Kuk Mo. We don't have a name for her. We don't have any relationships for her in all the grave goods in her very rich tomb. But she was a native of the Copan Valley. There is no evidence that she was Popoho's mother, yet Popoho buried her with great honor. There's no confirmed remains of Popoho either. Ricardo Agurcia has found the Oropandola tomb, the Oropandola temple and tomb right next to Hunal. It's another one of the structures buried underneath Temple 16. But unfortunately, the burial there was crushed when the lintels fell inside the tomb, crushed the bones really pretty completely. The jury's still out. There may be some things found later, but so far nothing. There's no confirmed identity, and here's my phone ringing, but we'll just leave it. No confirmed identity for the Motmot burial yet, but her strontium isotope places her in the Central Peten too. And there's no definitive translation for the P1 glyph on the Shukpi stone. It looks like it's Ek Ahau or How, and there's no definitive proof other than the Shukpi stone and how Yax Kuk Mo rose to power, that he was connected to Siak Kuk. There's two possibilities here. there's no possibility that the common narrative really happened. If because if Yax Kuk Mo killed Kak Hun and married his wife, Popo Ho would have only been 8 years old by the time that the Motmot burial happened, and here he's shown as a grown man sharing rulership. He would have only been 10 years old when Yax Kuk Mo died, and because of his building and all his inscriptions and everything, Popo Ho was very much in control in 437. It's a little bit much to expect from a 10-year-old. On the other hand, remember that date, that 416, that Yax Kuk Mo, when he was just Kuk Mo, maybe was in Copan. If he married the woman then, well, he could have had Popo Ho as his son and her son, and he would have been 18, 19 years old by the time that the Baktun ending was happening. He was a young man. He could have been shared the throne, and he may have honored the Margarita woman because maybe she was his mother. We don't know. I kind of think that Popo Ho was the son of another woman that Yax Kuk Mo married, but he had the smarts to treat her very well and bury her with lots of honors to ingratiate himself with the nobility of Copan. And with that, open to questions. Anybody has comments or questions?
Well, Janice, that was a really good program, and you've held the interest of everyone who's been admitted. There's only a couple comments. Gail would like to know how common was it to have a gap between lords?
It did happen, especially when there was conflict or other claimants to the throne. It happened in other kingdoms. It happened in Copan itself to 18 Rabbit's father. When you have a young person ascending to the throne, yeah, there's other claimants to the throne. And especially in Tikal at that time, the Yax Mayan, the son of Spear Thrower who was put on the throne, he was a very young boy at that time, and he died in 404. So sometime between being put on the throne as a boy with Siak Kak as his regent and 404 was the only time he was there to establish himself. So Tikal had a long history, lots of nobles wanting that throne. It would have been a tough situation to have a smooth passage from one power to another.
And Edward Bowles would like to know, what is the meaning and origin of the goggles, the Yax Kuk Mo War?
That's a very interesting thing. Yax Kuk Mo had the goggles, and there is one other burial. This is interesting. One other burial at Copan where the person in that burial, the remains, had goggles. I kind of sort of think that was Popo Ho, but so far we have no name, no proof. That burial was very close to the Hunal tomb where Yax Kuk Mo was buried. The only other place where we see these goggles is remember the Quetzalcoatl temple in Teotihuacan? Around its sides are the feathered serpent and alternating with a goggle image that some people say uh, Talak, the rain god. We have other people at Teotihuacan show up in illustrations with goggles, but so far down here at Copan, we only have Yax Kuk Mo and this one unidentified burial. So maybe the goggles represented the war power of Teotihuacan in these Maya regions.
All right. Ray Piper, who you must know because you recommended Michael Coe's book to him, he says, I'm just a beginner, so please excuse this question, but some of the names I've read about have a translation that refers to animals, birds, and so on. Is there a translation of the components of the name Yax Kuk Mo?
The components of Yax Kuk Mo, Yax is resplendent or first. Kuk is the Quetzal bird, and Mo is the macaw. So he's first Quetzal macaw.
Wow.
Kakun is fire one. Let's see, Siakak is fire is born. Siaj is stands for is born. Unabalam is sometimes referred to as his first jaguar. So the names do mean different things. Not all of them mean animals. Balam Nen is jaguar mirror. Let's see, who else? Waxacladun Abaquail is 18 rabbit. Washak is 8. Wahun is 10. And the little rodent character in the middle, I think it's a chipmunk, but I think it's a guti actually. But 18 agouti just doesn't sell. So it stands for Uba. 18 images of the war serpent, Kawil, who is also 18 image. Kawil is the god of legitimacy, a god of dynasty. So 18 rabbit is really 18 images of the god Kawil.
And Edward's also asking, what was the strategic purpose of Tikal sending a lieutenant to Copan? Was this part of a Cold War against another power?
Some people think so, that we don't really know if it was Tikal that sent him or whether he decided, hey, I'd like to be king of this little place down here. Why don't I go to Teotihuacan, get my license, and then go on down here? He was obviously very much allied with Tikal, and maybe it was part of Tikal's aim to stabilize the southwestern border. There's a lot made of the competition between Tikal and Calakmul, which is just north of Tikal. And Calakmul had a policy of ringing Copan with its vassals, with its subordinates, and so it would help Tikal to have an ally down there in the southeast. But no evidence has been found yet that Tikal deliberately sent Yax Kuk Mo to Copan. And
Huh.
if Yax Kuk Mo had been in Copan in 416, well, maybe he'd already been there once, and as a Caracol lord, he decided, hey, I want to do that. I want to be a king.
Wow. And what can you go over once again the 150 miles? Was that Kuk Mo before he was a Yash going to the foundation house in Teotihuacan, and then the return was 150 miles?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's Alter Q. We're going to
Yeah, that was
go.
right at the beginning of your talk.
Yeah, let me. Do I dare go back there? Because we had so much trouble. I'll just talk us through it. Yeah. Alter Q says that he received the Kuil scepter, he received the license to be king, and 3 days later he left the Witana. 153 days after that. So that is his return journey.
Okay.
And um, I did a little calculation on that to see if that was really possible. And when Siakak was invading Tikal, he sacked Waka, which is 50 miles west of Tikal, and it took him 8 days to get to Tikal. So that's 6 miles a day, not very speedy,
Right.
especially on established Maya roads. Um, so Teotihuacan is 750 miles from Copan. You divide 6 into 750, and you get 120 plus days. So 153 days, yeah, it's certainly doable.
Okay. Soaring Bear was calculating about 10 miles per day. Um, but that's what it is. And we have
Yeah.
another.
Now, in there was a Roman author writing about this same time about the Roman. His name is Vegetius, and he wrote the disciplines of the Roman army. The Roman army in full armor was expected to cover 20 miles a day,
Wow.
but
Geez.
that was probably on Roman roads.
Mhm.
But the Maya had very good, trade partners, and so they had travel routes that they could
Right.
follow. He wasn't hacking his way through a jungle.
Right. Oh no, there were well established, probably pretty wide uh trade routes. And on the Shukpi stone, I-12 really looks like the bird at Teotihuacan.
We're going to go back there. Yeah, the bird, the owl or eagle, um, is interesting because the syntax is different here. It doesn't follow straight through. The dates are all in the center of the stone, and um, the beginning is just naming the stone and talking about what it is, and it's the tombstone of the Lord of Copan. And then you have this bird in the center, and it says it's talked about the whole story is that he took the headband is talked about on the 9 stones. We don't know where those 9 stones are or what that's referring to. But yes, the bird does very much the head of it looks very much like a Teotihuacano bird that you find on at Tetitla, the barrio, one of the barrios of the Maya up there.
Hmm. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. Does anybody want to unmute and ask? Oh, here's one more. What was the commercial value of Copan that an outsider would want control?
Um, Copan was the link between Kamanalhuyu and the rest of the world, the rest of the Maya world in very early days. The trade routes came from Teotihuacan across the, I can never pronounce this, the isthmus, down to the Pacific coast,
Throughout the
through,
yeah.
yeah, through Kamanalhuyu and up to Copan. Copan controlled Quirigua, and Quirigua is right on the Motagua River that Kamanalhuyu is, and that was a big place of jade.
Right.
That's where jade was mined. Mary Lou Reininger found the mine, and she's of course runs the Maya Museum there in Antigua and produces some very nice jade jewelry, of which I am fortunate to have some.
They just Mary Lou just celebrated 50 years, the anniversary of you know, her endeavor with the Jade Factory and the museum and everything. It's wow, it's been 50 years, and it took them 37 years to convince the government of Guatemala that that was really jade out there in them there hills.
Well, we'll raise a glass to Mary Lou and congratulate her on the achievement.
Yeah, that's quite an accomplishment. All right. One person is entering an hour late, Beatrice, but I'll let her in just to so she'll know it's the end. Everyone's thanking you. Georges Ferry think was a great presentation. Gail Hansen says, thank you. What an interesting path of inquiry. Uh, Here's a question from Rob. Doesn't the latitude of Copan, Kaminahuyu, and Izapa all have the 260-day zenith duration between I'll answer yes to that. What
Yeah, and that is true. Yes.
yeah. And
Yeah.
plus I've always heard that I think it could be even in the Popol Vuh, excuse me, that the Quiche kings used to go to Copan to receive their kingship rights.
Hmm.
That, that was probably later on, but
What dates did they have for them?
I'm not I'm not sure of dates at all, but
Because the last king of Copan, Yax Chan Yopat, the last mention of him is 820 when he went to Quirigua and did a celebration with the reigning king there.
right. And
And
I'm
that was
not
the end of
sure of the the Popol Vuh mentioning
it.
the Quiche royalty. I'm not sure how the dates coincide.
Yeah. But a lot of these deserted Maya cities, because it happened at Tikal too, and it definitely happened at Teotihuacan. Later generations of people would go to these semi-empty cities because they were holy places. They
Right.
were shrines. And so, while there may not have been somebody there who actually had the authority to grant kingship, well, it's like doing the Hijaz to Mecca. You can put your finger on the Kaaba and say, "Okay, I've been there."
All right. And nobody's unmuted that wants to ask a question directly.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to mention in terms of people continuing to use the sites, I think it was during the Mesa Redonda in 89 when I was at Palenque that we saw evidence of some kind of ritual having been taken place at the Temple of Inscriptions, where it looked like there had been some burning and it looked like some residue of blood down in one end, one corner. And there certainly were local people around who were going in there.
Mhm.
So I think it continued for a long time, where people continued to, want to participate with the
Yeah. Well,
the
actually, that's very true. When the Guatemala Civil War, which went on for 30 years, it was really a bitter thing. One of the settlements of that war was that the natives, the Maya, could go back to these sites and worship again. And that was when I met Jim the very first time, way back in 2010. We went to Shimchi, we went to Kirigua, and we participated in the rituals, ate Batz, and we participated right there in the site. And Tikal does have altars with ashes and the residue from sacrifices there today. And wasn't it at Ischinte that we were in front of that reconstructed temple, which the modern Maya had piled the stones again and put them in a different formation. And
Right.
somebody in the group said that, oh boy, archaeologists would not approve of that. But we all agreed that, hey, it's not ours; it belongs to them, and they can arrange their own stones any way they want to.
And they knew they were sacred stones. They knew they carried an energy of
Right?
the past.
Exactly. Exactly. So, Diane, your observation is right on.
It may have been 86. I was there for two of the Mesa Redondas, and I can't remember which one it was. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They are doing worship back at their ancient cities again.
And it took it took Guatemala longer to authorize modern Maya ceremonies at the sites, but Mexico also went through that period. I can remember in the 90s going with Yucatec elder Hunbat's men, and he's been arrested on the steps of the pyramid of Culcocan there in Chichen Itza for just burning incense. And we actually did a ceremony the day before the spring equinox, but we were with Jose Argüelles, Hunbat's men, Domingo Diaz Porta, who was the indigenous leaders of the tribal council of all indigenous tribes of the Americas. And we did a ceremony back in the woods behind the big ball court. And a Mexican SWAT team showed up.
Oh my.
They decided to keep their distance because they saw gringos in the circle.
Oh, wow.
But it was still Mexico. Oh, even though it was 2010 at Izapo when we took 13 Quiche Maya elders into Izapo, only 15 miles inside Mexico, but from Momostenango, where Dennis and Barbara Tedlock received they became day keepers there, studying with the elders in Momostenango. It took a year and a half to get them visas to leave Guatemala. But anyway, when in the state of Chiapas, the officials in charge of all the sites and they were totally against that we were going to do a ceremony at Izapa, and nobody had done ceremony more than 900 years there. But we pulled it off on some private land right at the end of the ball court F, where that was aligned with the whole 2012 alignment and stuff like that. We did it on private land with a view of the ball court behind us. And the mayor of Tapachula was so ecstatic that we had pulled this off in spite of the wishes of the state officials, that he invited our whole group of 50 people to a big lunch and press conferences. It was really, really something. But yeah, it took a while before the governments actually started allowing the indigenous people to re-enter the sites officially. I mean, even at Kirigua, we saw altars there. When we did
yeah.
a ceremony ourselves on the altar.
Yep.
But I'm so glad they came around and the indigenous. Now they're I mean, when we did an 8 Batz sort of like New Year ceremony, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you make your way to the shrine, and it's timed with when the sun comes up to end. But what was I getting at?
Officials discouraging us.
Yeah. But that was in the shrines in Momostenango, where they have had a continuous
Yes.
participation of the indigenous. And to become a daykeeper, you go from shrine to shrine and the 260 days and the whole thing. But it's such a big thing with me on our last ceremony when we went to Ixmische and on the banks of on the side of Lake Atitlan. We went to Takalikabak, did a ceremony. We went to Azapa, and then we came back to Momostenango and did the big ceremony there. And it was a day when there was such cloud action that the clouds were coming over the mountaintops through the tall pine trees. It was just so clouded over. But yet at the end of our ceremony, a hole opened up in the clouds and the sun shone down on our little group, on our sacred fire circle. And then everybody's, hugging and congratulating themselves. And then chalk let go with some rain and everybody ran over. But when we went to the final dinner that night, our leader taught Rigoberto accept Chanchovac. He was crying. He was crying because the Maya gods had shown their faces. And the sun god and the rain god had shown their faces. And that was, to him, in his career of being a spiritual elder, that was a big confirmation. It was really, really something to experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
the old religions are still alive.
The what?
The old religions are still alive.
Very much so. Very much so. Mm-hmm. And even the the Maya still today, if they've got their little corn crop, they're not only doing little rituals and petitions at the four corners of their milpa, but they're praying for rain. They're praying they still go into the caves. If it hasn't rained on time, they'll still petition chalk in a cave. No more child sacrifices, no more sacrifices, but there's still the gods, like I say, the gods are still very real, and especially to the Maya people. It's they're connected in their soul to the gods. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. Maya today, this is George's Ferry, periodically venerate Pakal, that there were revisit up to our times, and it's not surprising, and it underlines the power of the ancestors through time.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's not only the Maya. I've traveled to Greece too, and even though the mysteries of Eleusis are banned by the Greek Orthodox Church, there's euros stuck between the stones as offerings.
Uh-huh. Uh,
All right. Well, that was really, really good, Janice. Thank you for doing that, writing all those books, doing all this research, and continuing to return to Copan. Uh, and
Yeah.
with that, I will just thank everybody once again for tuning in, and I'll end the program.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Good to see
Diane.
you.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for watching this Aztlander presentation, and please subscribe to our Aztlander YouTube channel. To receive free monthly issues of the Aztlander Magazine of the Americas, contact your host Jim Reed at mayaman@bellsouth.net. Thanks again.